Actually, City of Brass deals a damage to you when it becomes tapped.
That is what I said. Thank you for
No, you
repeating.
said when you tapped it for mana. Your opponent can tap that thing down and do a damage to you.
So when you tap a land like that,
Hey, I've got to get my actuallys in when I can. Greetings and salutations, Thoughtcasters of the internet. It is another episode of this, the MTG Thoughtcast, Commander Show, hosted by your two favorite brothers, sort of this Urza Mishra thing that we've got going on. And today, we have a very cool episode. This was recommended to us in a comment on one of our last underrated card color series videos to talk about some of our favorite underrated lands that we play in our decks, and boy, is there quite a few that I was able to pull. My name's Joseph. I'm one of the hosts here, and across the screen, or somewhere across your ears, is my brother, John. John, did you find some good underrated lands to talk about today?
I'm on top of the command tower.
I would say that's a properly rated land. If you're going to talk about command tower on this episode, we're going to have to restart.
It's the joke I've been doing for every single one of these.
It's true. It's true.
Good evening, everybody. Good day. Good morning. Yes, we've got lands to talk about, the most crucial backbone that every deck needs. Before you say, yes, I know Manaless Dredge exists, but everything needs lands. And so we're here to tell you about our favorites that you aren't playing.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's some you know us. We love talking about budget cards. We love talking about underrated bangers. That's kind of the point of this whole series. And I don't think there's a single card that I'm talking about today that's over $1. That's how exciting this is. Lands is kind of the most boring thing to talk about for Commander because it's they just produce mana. But there's so many good additional things and utility lands and some sneaky color fixing that can be had really, really cheap. So that's all that we're getting into today. But before we get into all of that, we have to give a shout out and a huge thank you to sponsor of the show, Heavy Play. They're our favorite playmats, deck boxes, sleeves. All those things are super, super great from Heavy Play. They're portable, they're magnetic. It's awesome. If you want 10% off of your first order with Heavy Play, you can use code MTG Thoughtcast, all one word, at checkout, or go to heavyplay.com/MTG Thoughtcast. If you want to know all about that, more, today's episode, play some games with us, brew some decks, there's a Discord link down below. It's totally free. Just jump in there, hang out with us. We're there literally every day. Right now, we're talking about a lot of spoilers that are going on, because as soon as Edge of Eternity's dropped, it seems like now we've got a dual Spider-Man Avatar spoiler season. So if you want to get caught up on all of that and get our takes on those as they come out, jump in our Discord down below. While you're down there, if you want to support the channel for totally free, there's a bunch of free YouTube buttons just slightly down below this video. Likes help out the algorithm a ton. Comments let us know that you guys care. And subscribes help grow the community. If you want to be a part of all those things, just left to right, just hit all of the buttons except for the dislike button. Don't hit that one. Don't hit that button. Most of the 99% of the buttons are great, and I want you to hit as many of those as you feel compelled to. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Shout out to all of you who've been doing this for so long and are continuing to be in our comments and likes and all of those things. That's all the upkeep that I have breath for. John, do you want to kind of take us away into the first segment of today's Underrated Lands episode?
Right. So as a brief reminder on what this whole sort of series of videos that we've been doing, and in case you haven't caught up with us before, we have recently just finished up all of the monocolor cards. And the idea behind what this series of videos has been, these podcast episodes, is us sharing with all of you really opinion-based stuff, more or less. You know, everybody has opinions and ideas on what their favorite cards and their underrated things or whatever. Our idea behind this is that we have been sharing with all of you some of our favorite collections of cards in those specific color parameters on things that you should be playing more frequently in some of your commander decks, and the sort of philosophy as to why we like enjoying playing what we play. and the sort of ideas and deck strategies that those kind of cards could go into. And so before we start moving on into our 2-color sets here in the near future, like Joseph had described about, we had a comment suggestion saying, hey, let's take a brief sidestep to talk about some ideas of lands. Because like I was saying about in the intro of this podcast, lands are the backbone of every commander deck. You know what I mean? You got
99.999% of commander decks are running somewhere between 35 and 38 lands, I would say.
correct. And obviously, a crucial part of that is, especially when you are playing multiple colors in your decks, you need the mana fixing, as it's all described, to make sure that you can actually cast what you're looking to cast. Obviously, a deck can be built with all just basics, but the chances are you probably will fall behind as far as your available color selections if you aren't playing some of those ones as like dual lands and tri lands and the other like fetchable lands and things of that nature. And everybody knows that those are all very crucial and important to a deck building strategy. But what we would like to talk about with you today for this episode is the kind of filler pieces, both things that are described as utility and like unconventional fixing is sort of like some of the lists that I've gone with here.
Yep, me
These are
as
the
well.
kinds these are the kind of lands that you may not initially think of as ones that are very helpful and crucial to like what your deck strategy is looking to do. But fixing and utility is very important to have a not necessarily a 50-50 split, but I think you would be neglecting an important part of the game if some of your mana base is not utility focused.
Sure. I kind of treat some of the utility lands as a spell in the deck as well. Like, as we get into this, we kind of start talking about some of them that I've pulled are for dealing with non-basic lands on an opponent's board or nuking graveyards, things like that. You can treat those as a spell, and then it just adds to your land slot, which helps you need to mulligan less, and you'll get mana screwed less often if you're treating these colorless, largely utility lands as spells in your deck, or vice versa. Like you said, you could just add these in as a land instead. You can cut lands for these because they still count as lands and still tap for mana. Just as you start to increase the number of colors in your deck, you just got to be careful with some of the colorless ones. But man, they're just so useful. You know, black has a Bajuka Bog, which is a very well played card. I would say that is a properly rated card. In addition to Scavenger Grounds, I would say most people rate this properly. Underrated one that I love using in especially non-black decks is Pit of Offerings. This is a cave land that enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, exile up to 3 target cards from graveyards. And then it either taps for a colorless mana or taps for 1 mana of any of the exiled cards' colors. So you can snipe a few troublesome cards from graveyards, keep people from getting access to them, and then it sneaky fixes your mana as well, at sort of the same rate that the Bajuka Bog would come down. So this is the kind of cards that we're going to be talking about on this show, is super sneaky, underrated cards that will just help your game plan while sitting in your mana base.
Yeah, Pit of Offerings especially. This is something that I have just been starting to include more recently. It's got some really great flexibility to it as well. The fact that it just only hits cards from graveyards, so
Hmm.
absolutely in a pinch, you can be sniping things out of your own graveyards. Because like
Oh, yeah.
especially with like green and things of that nature, you know, you'll be casting green spells like things like Rampant Growths and Cultivates or whatever, and then 90% of the time those spells are done doing what they did for the rest of the game, to be perfectly honest,
Definitely.
unless you're like flashing them back. And then so you could just throw those into Pit, and then now that is a card that lets you, it now makes you green if you exile your own spell. And then, like you said, a troublesome card or two that is sitting around in other people's graveyards.
We all fell in the pit, didn't we?
I
Um,
fell into the pit.
I use this one exactly how you're talking about it in my Slime Against Humanities deck, or Slime Against Humanity, because I can grab one of my Slime Against Humanity from my graveyard, put it in exile. It still counts toward the future Slime Against Humanities, and then it itself taps for green while also being able to snipe a few extra things from my opponent's graveyards as we go. Again, I played in a green-red deck, so typically don't have access to Bajuk Bog, don't have access, and I don't want to play just dedicated graveyard hate in those decks. So Pit of Offering is perfect there.
Multifunction, exactly.
That's right.
Now, as we begin to talk about all these other lands, what could be a really fun land that you'd be able to include within the right color parameter, obviously? That, let's say, you need your Pit of Offerings immediately at the go, or you're playing any of the other lands that we're about to start talking about for the rest of the show today. What if you want a land to help you go and get those lands?
The
I'd like
Urza's
to tell
Cave?
you. No, no. Well, Urza's Cave is a good one as well. Play more Urza's
Oh.
Cave. That one's very fun as well. A favorite of mine is called Tolaria West.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Tolaria West, granted, you have to be blue to play this land, but I like what this land does a lot. It is a land, it enters the battlefield tapped, it makes a blue, or has a activated ability on it called Transmute. For 1 and double blue, you discard the card. This is from your hand, so not from in play. You discard it, and you search your library for a card with converted mana cost 0 and reveal it, put into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Transmute only as a sorcery. Transmute is an old Ravnica mechanic that appeared on Dimir cards during the original Ravnica block, and the transmute cost on the card itself was always the same, but the transmute that you could do was equal to whatever the mana value of said card was. So in the case of transmute being on this land, you'd be able to go and get a card that has mana value 0, which is every land, essentially. This
Yes,
is a land.
exactly.
This is a
Are there
land
any
that
lands that have mana outside of like Charax? Are there any lands that have mana value? I don't
I
think
don't
so.
like the double face ones, I guess, but then you can't really be tutoring them with this kind of card anyway. But it's just this is useful, you know. This is a because transmute is also it's an activated ability from your hand as well. This is not like a spell that could be countered, you know, like
Mhm.
traditional any land type of tutoring type of things. Again, other than like Urza's Cave, you know, you have popular Commander All Stars like Expedition Map and Sylvan Scrying and those other like green ones that say like, oh, at a particular condition, just go and go get a land. Those are all spells that could be countered or stopped or like taken control of or whatever.
Right.
Things like transmute and channel and things of that nature, they are activated abilities from hand, meaning they are way harder to stop. And even though transmute is a sorcery, this just allows you to go and fetch out of your library any land that is most relevant to you. So very toolbox focused, right? Do you have a land in your 99 that say like Pit of Offerings is your graveyard? Hey, there you go. You transmute Tolaria West, go grab your Pit of Offerings. Now you have instant access to your graveyard hate. And then, like I was saying about all these other ones that we're about to go into for the rest of the episode today, any single one of those, whatever is most relevant to you at the current state of the game, Tolaria West would be able to be the tool that you can use to go and fetch out that land. Myself, personally, my copy lives in my Yidris 4-color Gates deck. This is a land that if I don't already have access to grab Maze's End, this is a land that allows me to go and get it. But if, like, say, the end is already in my hand or I already have access to it by another means, Tolaria West is here to be able to go and get whatever other sort of utility gate is most relative, like Gone Gate and Baldur's Gate or the Thriving Ones or like Thran Gateway, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's funny, I was almost going to compare it to Urza's Cave, but it's actually so much better if you have access to it, because Urza's Cave has to be in play. It can pay 3, tap, and sacrifice it to go and get a land. So in some ways, it's similar to Tolaria West in a non-blue way. But if you're playing Tolaria West, you get to build sort of a toolbox around it, too, because it finds anything with converted mana cost 0. That's like free spells. So if you're playing any type of a Cascade deck that you want to like go and find your Ancestral Visions and put it back on top, Tolaria West can do that. If you want to find anything that has X in its mana value, like anything that's either X or double X or triple X, those all count as 0 as well. So you can go and find these late game things like there's a snake. It's X. Come on, Oracle.
Oh, Stonecoil Serpent.
Stonecoil Serpent. Honestly, one of my favorite cards, and it's just X in the mana value. So late in the game, if you're like, man, I just need this huge thing that's going to protect me, Tolaria West goes and gets that in the same way that it would go and get a land. So I love these toolboxy. It's almost Green Sun Zenith-y in that way, like going and finding some toolbox cards. So being able to include those things. If you need ramp, you can go and find your ever-flowing chalice because that's on 0 but has multi-kicker. So like you can hedge all of your game around having Tolaria West in a really cool way. And then whenever you go to transmute it, yeah, floor of it, you can go and get your land, you can go and get your Pit of Offerings, etc. But then the ceiling of that becomes going and getting an X spell and finding something ridiculous with it. Pact of Negation, dude. You could transmute this, Pact of Negation. Oh, if only you could transmute at instant speed.
I tell you what.
Absolutely get people.
All right, pass priority to you.
Nice. Okay, what if you need to find a removal spell on a land?
I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay, this one, I've played it in quite a few decks. The decks that can recur it, I really enjoy, but it's also just a fun one to have sitting there. This is Quicksand. Quicksand is a land from the original Zendikar set that either taps for a colorless mana, or you can sacrifice it. Target attacking creature without flying gets -1/-2 until the end of turn. It's like a shock on a land for a attacking non-flying creature. And I understand that's niche, but you have no idea how much this almost acts as a Mazavith in the way that like people just are careful about attacking at you when you have a Quicksand in play, because that changes combat math. If they've got a 5/5 that's attacking into your 4/4, that normally they'd be able to get through, and you're like, I've got this Quicksand sitting here that makes your 5/5 a 4/3, and now our things trade. Or even if you have a 3/3, they can't attack you with a 5/5 safely. Like again, like your Yidris. If I'm sitting there with a Quicksand in play, you're probably not attacking me if I have other blockers down too. So it's
Probably
just this
not.
like, it's also, man, you just see so few removal spells attached to lands that being able to just throw this in and you've got a sneaky 7th or 8th removal spell in your deck if you need it. I kind of start looking this direction when I'm playing maybe aggressive decks that don't have a lot of blockers held up, and I'm like, I just need something that's going to be able to snipe some like Looter Illicord that's coming at me, or something of that nature that's unblockable, or this gets like Changeling Outcast, make sure that doesn't get through. Like there are all these unblockable things that are super cheap, or just really easily sniped by the Quicksand, and then like I said, just really messes with combat math and is a great. It doesn't come in tapped, so again, you can still play your Soul Ring on turn 1 and then have access to this sneaky little removal spell just sitting in your land base for the rest of the game.
It's also just nice that the Quicksand doesn't have to go at an attacking creature that's coming at you. So in the case of like what we play with Commander, it's a multiplayer format. So let's say you want to try to make alliances with somebody a player B is attacking player C. You can be like, oh, let me give you a hand over there, throw you some pocket sand over your direction here. Help them in a combat situation for a cheeky little favor later down the line. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And exactly like you said, a very interesting land for recursion purposes as well. That like you can keep this on deck all the time. The fact that it doesn't require any extra mana to go into the sacrificing ability itself, just tap sack itself, easy.
Just pop it and snag something with 2 toughness.
Even better as of late, we've had the entire booster set and precon from Edge of Eternities, who now has a whole new like availability package behind it of when you sacrifice a land. There's tons of new cards now that care about that kind of thing. This is a great land that, outside of like a fetching capability, is a land that can just eat itself for extra value.
100%. Yeah, it's an excellent card, I would say, and severely underplayed. It's currently about 11 cents. So like these are in bulk piles that if you just throw it in and see what happens. I'm such a proponent of like, you could sit here and debate whether a card's going to be good in your deck or not, or you could just throw it in and see what happens. And you might be surprised, or you quickly will go, okay, I need to not have this card in my deck. Like, just play around. I'm such a tinkerer with my decks. Like, they rarely stay the same from Commander Night to Commander Night. Like, I almost always come home from Commander Night and start tweaking with different ratios or how many lands or what kinds of lands are in. So like Quicksand is one that I've just found myself slotting into decks before I go to a commander night, and then it just lives in the decks that like, okay, it did something cool, you get the spot in the deck.
Mm-hmm. Now, you sitting behind your Quicksand, and you want to make sure that your opponent's creatures are not going to combat. You're able to kill them all the time. And what if you have a cheeky little land that is giving them a said creature that you want to make sure that they're not swinging with it? I'm really struggling the train here to kind
Segue
of
is
correlate these together.
segueing, John.
Let's talk about my favorite Wooburg producing land, which is Forbidden Orchard.
That's neat.
Everyone is familiar nowadays with Exotic Orchard, as it pretty much is in every precon now, I want to say. It's been in a lot. You get Exotic Orchard a lot. But there's this other really fun one, originally from Champions of Kamigawa, called Forbidden Orchard.
Yeah, baby.
And this one, to peak credit on this as well, this is a bit on the more like monetary as far as expensive is concerned, about $7-ish or so, give or take nowadays. So,
well, it's the only thing that does what it does.
Kind of, yeah. Forbidden Orchard is a land. It produces just 1 mana of any color, as you would expect a land like this to probably do. However, it has a line on it that says, whenever you tap Forbidden Orchard for mana, a target opponent creates a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. This is a spirit without flying as well, by the way. This is just one of those generic colorless ones.
Just absolute decades of people misplaying that.
Precisely. So, what would be the reason for playing a land like this here? Well, let's start with the floor and work our way up. Yes.
Oath of Druids.
Well, that is a way to use this. If you're using this in a very more like combo centered way, yes, the floor is like if you are a deck that cares about your opponents having more creatures than you. That was something I was getting to. I was going to be starting at the absolute bottom floor of what this is here. This is a unrestricted Wooburg land. That was air quotes for our Spotify listeners here. Generally speaking, lands like this that just are untapped Wooburg come with some other kind of drawback to you as the player. Biggest example is City of Brass. Hits you for a damage when you tap it for mana. Mana Confluence requires you to pay a life into it to go.
Actually, City of Brass deals a damage to you when it becomes tapped.
That is what I said. Thank you.
No, you said when you tapped it for mana. Your opponent can tap that thing down and do a damage to you.
So when you tap a land like that...
Hey, I've got to get my actuallys in when I can.
Cold open. So not being dinged for life or needing to pay life into a mana or for a land like this here is great. That's a very cool thing. It also just says on this card here that just a target opponent makes the spirit tokens. So if you are, again, back to like what I was talking about on like making alliances with people to help kind of progress the game forward, you can just pick whoever is in most need of a creature when you use this for mana, you know? So if you are like have an opponent who is falling behind as far as their creatures is concerned, you like want to try to stay friends with them, you use your Forbidden Orchard, give them the creature, right? Give them something as a chump blocker. You know, there's a lot of ground-based combat that isn't necessarily focused around trample or whatever. Just giving them something to help their game progress along while giving you access to unrestricted Wooburg mana is a fantastic piece. And like what you were talking about as well with Oath of Druids, yes, a land like this helps you in the kind of decks that you care about your opponents either having more creatures than you or when they have creatures enter under their control, right? So for myself, as an example, this copy of a land that I play this in Oloro, which is caring on multiple fronts about my opponents having creatures. I play creatures in that deck like Soul Warden, who care a lot about when a creature enters under an opponent's control. I also play stuff like Authority of the Consuls in that deck as well, so that even if they are making that creature, it's coming in tapped.
Yeah, dude. Super, super great.
You know? If I had more copies of this would probably live in Camball as well, who Camball is...
I was going to ask if this is in your Camball deck.
No, mine lives in Oloro, but if I had another one of this, yeah, it would live in Camball because he is a legendary creature who cares about my opponents creating tokens.
Right. That makes sense.
It's very neat. Like, does it and as the game goes on, you can use a land like this less frequently for the mode of giving a creature to your opponents, right? Because like a
Yeah, leave
land
it for the
like this.
last land you tap.
Exactly, right. It's like as soon you get later into the game, you will just inherently draw more access to lands. You don't necessarily have to spend everything you've got immediately out the get-go, right?
Mhm.
So you can just leave this land back for later on until you either like you have a situation where you want your opponent to have another creature on hand, or just for emergency situations and things of that
Yeah.
nature. Like it's the usefulness of not dinging yourself on life at the cost of just giving an opponent a single 1/1 is great. This is a fantastic
Yes.
Wooburg centered land.
Well, and you talk about this all the time of having the option of politics cards where like if someone's being attacked by something that maybe doesn't have trample but is really big and your opponent's like, I don't want to sacrifice any of my stuff, you'd be like, hey, you owe me a favor, but I'll give you this chump blocker.
We had talked about with Edge of Eternities that corner case of the card Emergency Eject, where you can blow up somebody else's permanent and gives them a lander token. Here's a land that gives them a permanent that they didn't even have to have control of. You don't even have to blow up anything of theirs, and then you give them that lander token. If you care in any capacity about the permanents that your opponents control, Forbidden Orchard is a cool way for them to be able to gain something from you that they didn't even have to play. Like a
For
goad
sure.
deck as well, for example, you know? A goad deck would love your opponents to have more creatures.
Dude, I've also like this is a real thing that's happened to me. I play Guff Rewrites History a lot, and I've had opponents who don't have any permanents on board, and I can't cast Guff Rewrites History. So having something that just makes sure your opponents have something there is so helpful in those niche corner cases. Which again is like why I play utility lands. I'm not playing utility lands because they're going to be excellent all the time. I'm playing them because they're good in corner cases. It just
Exactly.
helps dig you out of holes that you're in or solidify victories that you should definitely have. Can I give you a bad card that I love since we've
Let's
talked
hit
about
it.
some good ones? Okay, so we're talking about unrestricted Wooburg lands. This is one that makes you sweat and just constantly keeps you on edge. Have you ever heard of Thran Quarry?
Not recently,
I like
no.
pulled it. It's I think it was from the list most recently, but it's from like the original Urza Saga block. So Thran Quarry is a land that just taps to add a mana of any color to your mana pool. But it says at the end of each turn, if you control no creatures, sacrifice Thran Quarry.
Oh, interesting. This reminds me of Glimmervoid from Mirrodin.
Yeah, it's Glimmer Void. So Glimmer Void, I think, was only on your end step. If you didn't control any artifact, it would sacrifice itself. Thran Quarry is end of each turn. If you control no creatures, it sacrifices itself. But if you're playing any type of deck that is consistently playing creatures, or maybe your Kindred decks, or something that you have like a 1 mana commander, like your Yoshimarus and etc., like this is really easy to come down. It's an unrestricted land for however many colors you're playing, and then as long as you maintain some type of a board state, it'll stick around. So what I love about it is almost like you were talking about with the Forbidden Orchard. Early in the game, it does what you need it to do, and late game, if you have to sacrifice it, who cares? It's whatever. Like, by turn 7, if you're like, oh no, someone board wiped and now I have to sacrifice my Thran Quarry, you're fine. Like, it's fine at that point. It's a bummer. But just this, like, oh, I just constantly have to keep a creature around so my Thran Quarry doesn't die, but I get unrestricted Wooburg mana is such a cool, like, again, like, I'm just sitting there white-knuckling the game a little bit, which is exciting.
That's very neat. Yeah, I've never seen this one before. I had just checked as well. Glimmer Void actually is in the same regard. It checks every end step if you don't have a artifact. So this
Artifact.
is a very similar type of card. But yeah, you have to control a creature every turn. And like, if you're just sitting behind a dinky indestructible creature or something with like hexproof, that's going to be very hard to remove. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I sort of like when your game feels like it's held together with duct tape, and this is one of those cards that does that.
Yeah.
All right, hit me with the next one, John.
Okay, all right. So are we still talking about bad Wooburg lands that
Yeah, I
we
think this is
enjoy?
the time for our hear me out picks.
All right. I've got a hear me out Wooburg-centered land, unlike the Forbidden Orchard, that it doesn't itself inherently give you instant access to Wooburg, but it's one of the best ones as far as filtering capabilities that help you create Wooburg mana if need be. And this is a long-term favorite of mine from the original Amonkhet called Cascading Cataracts.
Yep.
Cascading Cataracts is a land. It firstly, more than anything else, is indestructible.
That rips.
It also taps for a colorless, and then for 5 mana into it and tap it, make 5 mana in any combination of colors. So, yes, technically, it's 5 mana into this plus tapping it itself. So you're 6 mana in to create 5. But that is 5 mana filtered into whatever combination you need at that time.
For
You're-
sure.
You're playing big, greedy mana base. This is a card I used to play when I played the Ultimatums deck with Golos. Rest in peace, my baby boy.
Oh, good Golos.
I know, because like that was a greedy mana based deck. If you've ever seen the Ultimatum cards, they are just solid mana pips up in their casting costs. Some of them requiring 3 of the specific color. Actually, all of them needing 3 of one particular color. So, like, any good Wooburg-centered mana base, like, you're not always going to have access to every single one of those pips as you go. Because the inherent thing with mana fixing, especially if you're using good duels, is that your dual lands will only be producing you one of those particular types of mana. You could be running into situations where your access to triple black is also eating up all your green, and then you just don't have access to both shared sets of colors at any one given point, just due to the nature of how lands are. So a filtering land, and this is even like talking about even like the Lorwyn filter lands, those really good ones that, you just put one of a particular type and that filters out into some combination of the two, whatever is most useful to you. That's what makes those lands incredible for play in decks like these. Is Cascading Cataracts is just like a really big blown up version of that if you've just got 5 plus this sitting around, if you need some wacky tobacky combination of mana, you can just go right into Cascading Cataracts, and that helps you make whatever you need.
Sure. Yeah, I love that you can do like 4 white and a green if you need to, or you can do Wooburg if you need to. This is great. I also think like that indestructible line is becoming more and more relevant. I mentioned we're talking some Avatar spoilers on our Discord. The new Toph first to Metal Bend or whatever it's called. Honestly, any of the Earthbending cards become really great with indestructible lands. I would expect to see this starting to see some more play because Earthbending puts counters on a land and makes it a creature, and then it has an ability of like if that creature would die or exile, you get the land back anyway. But having like the difference between a 4/4 and a 4/4 indestructible is massive. So playing more of these indestructible lands for access to that, you've also got like your cleansing wildfires of the world. Like this is a pauper combo that requires having an indestructible land. So I think that is what's most exciting to me. The fact that it doesn't come in tapped and can immediately tap for colorless. Again, as I've mentioned before, you can still cast your Soul Rings on turn 1 with this. And then later in the game, if you're in a bind, being able to tap it and 5 others to make, like I said, whatever colors you need to is ridiculously good. This just sits in every point of the game and becomes relevant. And it's a Wooburg land that you could play this in a mono black deck. Like, do you know much about like the like chromatic black archetype? Where it's
No,
like,
I'm not familiar. No.
okay, so it's like cards like the Gaunties or whatever that make treasures and steal cards from your opponents or rev.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you still have to pay the correct colors for those things. So you play like your chromatic lanterns, you play your cascading cataracts in a mono black deck to be able to add 5 colors. You're playing a Wooburg mono black deck. Even like the Altair, was it Altair or one of them from Assassin's Creed that was a mono
Yes.
black?
Yeah. He was the mono black, and that like your end step, if you attacked with assassins that turn, you could pay Wooburg, and anybody under 10 life loses.
Yes, exactly. So it's a sweet archetype, and cards like Cascading Cataracts become really relevant to that because you can add like black, 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 and a blue so that you can cast your spells that you've stolen from your opponents. It's sick. So yeah, I'm with
I
you
was
on this
just
one.
I was just thinking about two other near corner cases as well. Firstly, send triplets has always been a very similar kind of vibe, right? It was like
Yeah,
you rip cards out of opponent's hands, but you still are required to have the correct colors to cast those set cards.
totally.
Another interesting case I was just thinking about as well, talking about to Edge of Eternity's commanders, we had the cards in the Jeskai charge counters thing that cared about Sunburst. Like those cards that
Dude,
gain
yes.
Sunburst. You could make Wooburg mana off of this, and then your things that have Sunburst, you get colors outside of what your commander deck is able to go.
All 5.
All 5.
Yeah, dude. It is. I would say this as you read it more and more, you understand why it's an underrated card. I
I'm
love it,
in.
dude. I'm trying to think of which direction to take us next. Perhaps in a card
Give me,
advantage direction.
yeah, I was gonna say, go a card advantage one. You haven't really talked anything like that yet.
Sweet. I think that the hideaway lands are still some of the best ones that you could be playing in Commander. I want to highlight Spinerock Knoll because it's just one of my favorites. So Spinerock Knoll is a land that has hideaway. I think it's now been eroded to hideaway 4, which is when it enters the battlefield. Sorry, it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, you look at the top 4 cards of your library and just exile one of them face down underneath it. The rest go on the bottom of your library. It can tap for a red, and then later in the game, a red mana and tapping the Spinerock Knoll, you can just play the exiled card for free as long as your opponent, if an opponent was dealt 7 or more damage this turn. So what I love about the wording of that is it breaks timing restrictions. So if you exile a creature or a sorcery or something, and you then get to play that at instant speed. If you know from my Emmett Selch love, breaking timing restrictions is one of my favorite things to do in Magic. It also doesn't care that you dealt 7 damage to somebody. So you can play this off turn if somebody just got smacked by something. And you're just like, actually, by the way, Spinerock Knoll, I'm going to play my Blasphemous Act for free. Everything's dead now.
Talking about utility cycles, by the way, and let's say you've just played something big, dumb, and stupid off of one of your hideaway things on your turn, let's say, or whatever, and you're looking to make sure that that creature is getting in, smashing, fast, hard, ready to go, and still back on the protection for you, so that you have access to not die on the crackback when you are swinging with this thing. I was looking for a one to talk about from the cycle of utility lands that were part of the original Innistrad set. There was a whole cycle.
Oh,
They technically tapped for colorless, but they had activated abilities on them within the 2 color pairs that did very strong utility things. And I'd say generally all of these are very
pretty good.
cool. They're very cool pieces for Commander. For me, my favorite is the Slayer's Stronghold. This is the one that has the Boros activated ability on it. It is a land, it makes colorless naturally, or for a red and a white and tap, a target creature gets 2/0 and gains vigilance and haste until end of turn.
That's so strong, dude.
Yeah, vigilance and haste is an incredible combination of pairs because that means whatever creature, if you've got 3 excess mana, this land itself plus a red and a white, that creature, the moment you go down to play it, it gets a power boost. It can immediately start swinging in, and the vigilance means that it is ready to still be a blocker for you on the back end.
Yep, that's awesome. You
And
also
that's
don't
great.
have to target your own creatures with it. Again,
Nope,
talking like sneaky politics pieces.
again, I was talking about with like playing like this is the right colors for especially like a goad deck, like I was just talking about as well. You want to have access like something you want to make sure that a creature that you have goaded is swinging in extra strong, extra tall, maybe being able to trade up even further than you were anticipating when needing it to go in and swing, you know, give it an extra power toughness boost, or not toughness, excuse me, a power boost from this land in and of itself. But like my copy of this, this lives in my Knight's Equipments deck here, right? Sir Gwen is an incredible commander to get going in with haste right out the get-go because she draws cards. She auto-attaches a bunch of equipment over to herself, so it is easier to have access to this land plus the red and the white spare when you go to cast her. She just auto moves all the equipment over to herself or any other knight that you have potentially played during that turn. And then red, white, oops, she's a little bit stronger now. She's swinging it immediately, still naturally has haste. She naturally comes with menace as well. And she's drawing cards when she goes into
So
combat.
good. Yeah,
This is very
that's
cool.
so strong.
I
I
know.
think it'd be great in like an Ishin deck as well. Anything that
Uh-huh.
like you don't want to sit around until your next turn to attack with something you've just played. And again, like these are as many of the other ones that we've said. This taps for a colorless. It doesn't come in tapped, and it has utility in the late game. So
I
just an
like.
excellent pick overall.
I like this one with the assorted Narsets, since you're playing in Jeskai colors, right? Every single one of those always have some kind of very relevant attack-based trigger.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean? The original being able to cast you free stuff to top your library, Enlightened Exile being able. This one's actually great with Enlightened Exile because you get to flashback stuff from graveyards equal to her power. So this kind of
yeah.
card is not only increasing her power, but being able to go into combat for you immediately.
Totally. Well, and in the case of something that doesn't have haste, like if your commander does not have haste and it's something that you want to be attacking with, you have to treat this like a time walk. Like it just gives you an extra turn where you don't have to sit around and wait for it to then attack. Like you just get to play this, pay your 3 mana, you've time walked yourself. Now it has haste and you can go and attack with it and immediately start getting its ability. I think that's the mentality to look at a card like this with, rather than like, oh, it's just like a little boost or whatever. And the fact that it gives vigilance too, so like you said, you can leave this back to block as well. It also doesn't get any, there's some corner cases where people have like, well, if a creature becomes tapped or destroying a tapped creature or whatever, that being able to just sneak in with vigilance is so useful.
All right,
Okay,
keep us going. What else you got now?
I think we've got time for one more each, and I think I'd like to give you my case for my favorite manland, something we've not talked about yet.
All right, hit me.
Um, so my favorite manland, for a plethora of reasons, which I will dive into here, is Blinkmoth Nexus. Blinkmoth Nexus is a land that taps to add a colorless mana. For a single generic mana without tapping it, this land becomes a 1/1 Blinkmoth artifact creature with flying until end of turn. It's still a land. And then for 1 and tapping it, target Blinkmoth creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. You will never activate that ability. What I love about Blinkmoth Nexus, not only does it become an evasive 1/1 for a single mana, that alone is pretty excellent. It becomes an evasive 1/1 that is also an artifact creature. So in your ever increasing decks that care about how many different card types you have out, this becomes an artifact creature land on its own. So this has 3 card types all on one thing for a single generic mana. And in the case that you're like desperate for it, this can just tap itself, funnel that single colorless mana into itself to animate itself. So you don't need an additional mana unless you're attacking with this thing for it to just sit there. It just turns itself into an artifact creature land, 1/1 with flying. So there's a bunch of corner cases with that. But also, edicts are becoming more and more prevalent in Commander. I've found myself on the receiving end of a Sheoldred's edict quite often, especially early in the game when you're setting up your strategy, you're setting up your commander. Maybe your commander is the only creature that you have in play, and then someone plays an edict, and that sets you back 2 turns because of the commander tax. Having something like a Blinkmoth Nexus in play acts as edict protection, because if you just leave it on its own and someone plays, for anyone who doesn't know what I mean by an edict, it's something that makes everybody sacrifice a creature. So you've got your
We had just talked about like that last episode. I talked about Liliana of the Veil from Dominaria United having that activated ability that targets a player to sacrifice a creature.
for sure. What's the new one from Modern Horizons 3? That's it's like a fleshbag marauder for 1 less.
A Cursed Marauder.
A Cursed Marauder, which makes everyone sacrifice a non-token creature for 2 mana. It's an excellent, excellent card that I've seen a lot more play. Blinkmoth Nexus, if you just have this sitting there for, even if itself, it's not tapped for mana, leave this as your last land that you tap. Someone plays that, you can just tap it, funnel its mana into itself, it becomes a 1/1, and then you can sacrifice itself. And then someone's edict, which is trying to get rid of your commander, has then just turned into a strip mine or a wasteland or whatever, which is significantly better if your deck cares about having your commander out. So I think Blinkmoth Nexus has a ton of play in being a protection piece, in being an evasive flyer. Like we've talked about this in the Edge of Eternity's unique builds strategy, where when you put +1/+1 counters onto an animated land, it holds those +1/+1 counters on them as it becomes not a land. So even in +1/+1 counter strategies, where you can just animate this, even if you're not attacking with it, you just pay itself, animate itself, and then dump a bunch of counters onto it. It then becomes not a creature, and now your land is just holding on to all these +1/+1 counters and becomes a flying threat late in the game because of that. If you're in a proliferate deck where you can just put one +1/+1 counter onto this thing, and then as the game goes on, you're just slowly ticking that thing up, and then you have a board wipe safe 15/15 with flying late in the game after a board wipe. Like, this card gets really nutty really fast. Obviously, we also could talk about Blinkmoth Nexus, which is the 1/1 with flying and infect. That one is obviously significantly more expensive, and I find that the instant that you say the word infect, people start pointing their guns at you.
As far as price, they're actually not that too far off.
Really?
Both Inkmoth and Blinkmoth were both in Edge of Eternity Stellar Sites. You can get them both for about $6 a piece.
Well, that's crazy. Dude, I'm looking at the Blinkmoth Nexus is like 65 cents.
Yeah.
The Blinkmoth Nexus, because it has infect, is significantly more expensive. So yeah, the Stellar Sites one is about $6, $7. The the Blinkmoth Nexus is sitting, depending on where you get it from, under $2 for Blinkmoth Nexus. But if you've
So
if you're playing like Babala
play
Saga,
one, play both.
100%. Yeah, if you've got the
You know what I
budget
mean?
for both, they both function identically, except one of them, obviously has has infect, which, like I said, turns some heads toward what you were doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is my final. This is the land
That's
that I think people should really be playing.
That's a cool one. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we don't get a lot of the man lands he'll come with flying, you know? Like everybody knows about the blue white one. What's that one called?
Celestial
Cascade
Colonnade.
Celestial Colonnade. Thank you. Hey, you out oracled me for once. Well
That's because I
done.
play that card a lot. Um,
Yeah, not a lot of the man lands naturally come with flying as well. So like a land access, like for doing those kinds of strategies, if you want one up and animated and ready to start swinging in, even if it is just like as a 1/1, if you care about an artifact creature hitting in any capacity, if you care about a creature with flying getting in any capacity, if you
yes.
care about swinging with a land, Inkmoth and Blinkmoth, both of them together, they make a very good pair of the
Yep.
two. I like that a lot.
Within the last couple of months, I helped someone on our Discord build an Edric Spymaster of Trest deck, and this just slots straight into there because it's a 1/1 flyer. Like, that whole deck is just 1/1 flyers that then get in, draw you a billion cards because you have your like Thassa's Trident sitting in the or Biden of Thassa sitting in the command zone essentially.
Yes,
but yeah,
man.
they're both great. If you're looking for like a third one of these, Mutavault also can do the whole trick of animating itself as it goes. I just don't like Mutavault as much because it doesn't have flying and it's not an artifact. So having access to extra card types, having access to evasion. I guess if you're playing a Kindred deck, like my Humans deck could probably use a Mutavault in it because it exists as every creature type. It's a changeling land as you animate it. And does all of the same things. And it's a 2/2 as well. Like, that's a bit stronger than a 1/1. It's double as strong. But yeah, of these.
I animate my sponge.
Exactly, right. Dude, I love writing down Sponge in the Volo journal from Changelings. All right,
All
that's
right,
the end of my discussion on lands. John, bring us home.
All right, I got my last one here for you, and I've got a real interesting, cool case to talk about with this land here. One of my favorite things to do in Commander is combo strategies. I love anything you put the engine pieces together and they do a thing. What's one of the most common engine combo things that you can pull off in Commander? A combination of cards put together, they create you infinite mana. And then it's from there, how do you win? How do you go about finishing what you're looking to do? I play a dedicated mono blue artifact shell that can pull off infinite mana very, very commonly. And this is even infinite mana outside of doing like Peregrine Drake and Deadeye Navigator or Palinchron, things of that nature. You can get a combination setup of artifacts. The easiest one is something like Basalt Monolith. Let's say you combo off with Basalt Monolith. Now you're sitting there with infinite colorless mana. what do you do with that infinite colorless mana? Where do you put it? How's something that you could dump that mana into to win the game? I'd like to tell you about one of my favorite outlets to dump an infinitely large, or even not even necessarily infinite, a large amount of colorless mana into to help you get to a point where you can win the game.
Tell me, I'm interested.
My favorite land in that deck is called Treasure Vault.
Yeah, dude.
Treasure Vault is an artifact land originally printed from the original Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Dungeons and Dragons set, a Magic the Gathering product by Wizards of the Coast.
Yes, very nice.
Treasure Vault is an artifact land. It either produces colorless or for XX tap and sacrifice, create X treasure tokens.
Yeah.
So
And
what
famously not broken treasure tokens.
No,
no one's
course.
ever abused those.
Let's talk about all this step by step. Let's say you've done the Basalt Monolith thing and you've made infinite colorless mana. You get to set this X value on the Treasure Vault to however arbitrarily large you'd like it to be. Make each X value, make it 1 billion. Who cares? You know, you're making infinite colorless.
1 billion treasures.
$1 million.
I feel like what you have to do though is pinky to the chin. You go 100 million treasures.
But yeah, let's talk about that as is, right? So like you dump an arbitrarily large amount of X into this here. If you care about an artifact entering your battlefield in any capacity, Treasure Vault is going to be one of the easiest ways to have a huge amount of the treasure tokens enter play. Even outside of, like I said, without infinite mana. You know, you just need to put 8 mana or so into this, right? An X of 4. You get 4 treasures coming in all at one go, you know? The value that I use for something like this being in a deck, obviously one in of itself, this land itself is also an artifact as well.
Super
So
good.
anything that cares about an artifact coming into play, Treasure Vault is one of those kinds of lands that triggers that kind of aspect. But like I was mentioning about with infinite colorless mana, you can sync that into Treasure Vault, and now you'll have access to colored mana because that's what treasures do. Treasures tap and sacrifice to create you a mana of any color.
That rips. Yeah, like you said, it completely filters itself. There's so few things that can turn colorless mana into colored mana, and this is a very strange, roundabout way to do it, but it works.
Mm-hmm. Again, you care about artifacts entering the battlefield in any capacity. This can make you a ton of treasure tokens. If you care about an artifact going to your graveyard, this is an artifact who has a natural sacrifice ability on itself as well. I don't know what kind of weird corner case you could find, but you could technically put 0 into the X on this Treasure Vault and sacrifice itself. I don't know what corner case that would benefit you for, but
yeah.
if you cared about an artifact, a non-token artifact land being put into your graveyard, that is a thing you could do, I suppose. If you care about artifacts being in your graveyard in any capacity, you care about a treasure. Is it just the fact that this card itself doesn't produce you color in any capacity?
Yes.
Name a deck within any set of colors that cares about you controlling an artifact, making treasure tokens, sacrificing artifacts, playing like artifacts from your graveyard, activating abilities, whatever. You know what I mean? Like I said, my copy of this lives in my mono blue for a Psy Master Thopterist. Like I said, it's a deck that is focused around the idea of generating infinite colorless mana. Then I sync that into the Treasure Vault, and that then helps me create the colored mana that I need to activate other cards on my battlefield to create infinite at that point.
Well, and that goes infinite with Psy in and of itself, because if you're making all these treasures, you make 1 billion treasures, every 3 treasures that you sacrifice becomes a card draw, right? Because it's 2 mana, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card.
Correct.
On Psy?
Yes.
Right. So then you've got sacrifice 2 treasures, that's your 2 blue mana, and then you just sacrifice a 3rd one with his ability and you draw a card. Because you have infinite treasures, that's now infinite draw your deck.
Which
so
then
excellent.
that leads into everything else that is workable to do, you know?
Yeah. I figured out my corner case, by the way. Treasure Vault, you can play it and sacrifice it for 0, and it gets you halfway to Delirium as your land drop for the turn.
Correct, because it is an artifact land, precisely.
You got there. Now we're thinking with portals.
There you go. Then you reanimate this with Winter, and then it's a artifact land with a finality counter on it. You
And then
eat
you
it
can
again
nesting
for
grounds,
more.
move the thing over, and just keep doing the thing.
Boom,
Now
we're
talking.
there.
Man, should we also just talk about nesting grounds as like, should we just round off the episode talking about how ridiculous nesting grounds is with moving finality counters from your permanents onto other permanents, which then I've got by Fish in our Discord has a winter deck that has regularly reanimated a nesting grounds with the finality counter on it, tapped and moved that finality counter onto something of mine with a ridiculous death trigger, and then now that thing gets exiled instead of dying, and then I don't get to recur it, and I don't get the death trigger off of it because he reanimated a land.
Yeah, in a world where we have use for moving things around like finality counters, stun counters, lore counters, all of that regard is amazing.
Stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say
honorable mention shout out is nesting grounds. Go play more of that.
100%. Well, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you guys have got some new ideas brewing for your utility lands and how you can see your mana base in a different light by accessing abilities through your lands. I think that's one of the ways that you can just level up your game because you can just have some spells sitting in your land pile. So hope today has been a helpful episode. This was kind of our break in between doing our color series and then switching into our dual color series of underrated cards,
Yes.
which will
Hey, you know
start
what? All right,
shortly.
comment engagement. We're going to be moving on to our dual color sets here soon. Would you guys like to see the allied colored sets or the enemy color sets first? Let us know in the
That's right.
comments down below. Highest vote is what we'll do first.
Drop them down there. You guys know where it is. Comments down below, likes and subscribes. Shout out to everyone who's been interacting with us lately. Once again, shout out to Heavy Play, sponsors of the show. If you want 10% off of some amazing, amazing accessories, that is MTG Thoughtcast at checkout or heavyplay.com/MTG Thoughtcast. Come join us on our Discord. We're there all the time, hanging out, talking about the episodes and decks in general, Commander, etc., spoilers, memes, all of it. If you want to reach us on social media, you can find us on Blue Sky. It's at MTG Thoughtcast or at Joseph-Thoughtcast or at John-Thoughtcast. Or you can email us at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. I think that's all of the ways. You can reach out to us in a lot of different ways. And we'd love
My
to
home
hear from
address
you.
is as follows.
Nope, that's it. End of the episode. Thanks for watching so much. We will see you guys next week on the MTG Thoughtcast.